certainly a lot of legend that surrounds the work and life of Picasso, including the very first story, which is that his first word in Spanish was the word for pencil. What we do know for sure is that his father was a painter and also an art teacher. But one of the myths surrounding that is that when his father saw his son's genius, he threw down his brush and never painted again. In fact, if you look at this work, which is probably not what you picture in your mind when I say Picasso, from 1895, it might surprise you to know that he depicted or he created this drawing when he was 14 years old. So he was a student at the Barcelona Art School. He was given the task of doing some figure drawing, and clearly you can see that he understands how the human body works, how it looks, and how best to render it. So I want to make it very clear that Picasso's arrival at abstract art, at cubism and surrealism is not for lack of skill. He definitely has the ability to draw and paint like an old master. In fact, he began by studying works like this one. So this is a work by the noted Spanish painter Diego Velázquez from 1635. And on the left, I'm showing you Picasso's copy of it. So in a sense, he kind of works through the traditional art forms before arriving at something that is distinctly different and his own visual vocabulary. He also has this wonderful saying that is, in art, one must kill one's father. So when you look at his work, La Moulin de la Galette, not only is he reflecting back on a whole long history and tradition of painting since the Renaissance, but he's looking at very recent works. It's the exact same subject. It was rendered in 1876 by Auguste Renoir and in 1889 by Toulouse-Lautrec. So you've got an Impressionist view of Le Moulin de la Galette, you've got a Post-Impressionist view on the right, and then you've got Picasso, who's also experimenting with Impressionism and how to render it with his own kind of signature style. Around 1901, late 1901, early 1902, blue begins to enter into the paintings of Picasso, and this period lasts until about 1904, 1905. And so these works that we call the blue period are almost always very monochromatic canvases, very blue in color, but also they're blue in mood. There is a kind of somberness that is created by these works because they were done at a time when Picasso was not doing particularly well. In fact, he had just arrived in Paris, and he wasn't really highly respected. He hadn't really built up a reputation as an artist. He was poor, he was lonely, and as a Spaniard, he was viewed as kind of socially and culturally inferior. So the story that unfolds here in this painting allegedly relates to the life of his good friend and fellow painter, Carlos Castagemas, who had an affair with a woman while he was visiting Paris, and then he left to go back to Spain, and when he returned, the affair ended, and ultimately he shoots himself publicly in a cafe over this rejection. But the thinking is that this image of a kind of mother figure, the woman who holds the child, who confronts this young couple, is modeled on Castagemas and his lover, who you see here on the left side. Now, the painting's title is Life, and he does it in Barcelona. It's actually quite large. This is about 6 feet tall. But it's interesting because in many ways it pays tribute to artists of the past. If you look at the rendering of this figure that's beneath them, it is very similar to an image created by Vincent van Gogh called Sorrow. But it also sets up this dichotomy between these two types of women, which is an ongoing kind of difference that we see in the whole history of art, going back to images of the Virgin Mary versus Mary Magdalene, but also in the work of Picasso, where you've got the kind of virtuous mother in contrast to the very sexualized whore, a prostitute here. So it is a work that has a kind of narrative to it. It's puzzling, it's enigmatic, and yet it evokes this sense of sorrow, somberness, this disconnectedness, this sense of alienation and kind of dissolution of family. Now, Picasso's career will improve rather quickly, particularly after meeting this woman, who you see right here, who's Gertrude Stein, who is an American collector and a writer who, along with her brother Leo, held a kind of salon in Paris. So they had lots of writers, lots of artists who they were friends with, and they would come to their apartment and they would talk about all of these artistic subjects. So Picasso will create a portrait of this notable collector, Gertrude Stein, but she'll also be important for him because she will help build his career. She will collect his works. You can see his portrait, which I'm about to show you right here. And also, she will introduce him to Henri Matisse, who is a very important kind of art celebrity in Paris at the time. So I love this image because you can see Matisse's A Woman with a Hat, and above it is Picasso's portrait of Gertrude Stein. So here it is. This is a portrait that Gertrude Stein sat for 90 times, but Picasso ultimately finished the face from memory after temporarily kind of abandoning the project. She has this weightiness, this kind of heavy block-like, almost sculpted form, which might remind you of Paula Modersohn-Becker's self-portrait, but was also influenced by the fact that Picasso had just seen an exhibition of Iberian sculpture, which was very close to his native city in Spain. And he was inspired by the features, the block-like forms of these figures. And so he created this kind of weightiness, this very substantial portrait that depicts Gertrude Stein. There's a very funny story where Picasso says, quote, "Everybody says that she does not look like it, but that does not make any difference. She will." So he was quite confident in his rendering of Gertrude Stein. I want to show you just briefly this film clip from the movie Midnight in Paris in 2011, which depicts Gertrude Stein as the art collector, and Picasso is there as well. And Gertrude Stein, by the way, is played by Kathy Bates, who does a great job of conveying kind of the weight of this character.
This is Gil Pender, Miss Stein. He's a young American writer. I thought you two should know each other.
I'm glad you're here. You can help decide which of us is right and which of us is wrong. I was just telling Pablo that this portrait doesn't capture Adriana. It has a universality, but no objectivity.
Non, vous ne le comprenez pas correctement. Vous connaissez pas Adriana. Regardez les mouvements, le tableau. C'est exactement ce qu'il la représente.
Non, tu n'as pas raison. Look how he's done her. Dripping with sexual innuendo, carnal to the point of smoldering. And yes, she's beautiful, but it's a subtle beauty, an implied sensuality. I mean, what is your first impression of Adriana?
Exceptionally lovely.
Belle, mais plus subtile, plus implicite, Pablo.
Yes, you're right, Miss Stein. Of course, you can see why he's lost all objectivity.
He's made a creature of Place Pigalle, a whore with volcanic appetites.
Non, c'est ce qu'elle est vraiment, si vous la connaissiez.
Yes, avec toi en privé, because she's your lover. But we don't know her that way. So you make a petit bourgeois judgment and turn her into an object of pleasure. It's more like a still life than a portrait.
Non.